Life is made of transitions, new schools, new jobs, new chapters. Let's talk about how to make change feel less scary and full of possibility. Hello and welcome to the Sensational Life with Bibic. I'm Abby
And I'm Natalie.
and we are developmental therapists at Bibic.
Each week, we're going to dive into the many layers of life with honesty, heart, and a little bit of humour. Because let's face it, navigating the world with additional needs can be tough, but it also can be empowering, inspiring, and yes, a little bit sensational.
Bibic is a national charity that supports many individuals with neurological or developmental challenges, and this podcast is our way of bringing support, tips and real stories straight to you.
This season, we're talking all things education, from navigating the classroom with confidence, discovering learning strategies, we're unpacking it all with some great guests too. So whether you're a parent, a teacher, or someone that just wants to better understand how to support the SEND community, you're in the right place.
So grab a cuppa, get comfy, and let's make the world a little more inclusive, one episode at a time. Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Sensational Life with Bibic. Today, Natty and I have got a lovely guest called Zoe on, and I'm not going to disclose too much about it because I really want to hear from you, Zoe, and for you to tell our listeners what it is you do. So, Zoe is part of, well, you run, don't you, the inclusion service. Could you just explain to our listeners what the mission of the inclusion service is and what your role is within it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Zoe Crarer. I am the founder of the Inclusion Service, which I'm really proud to say and share. So what we do at the Inclusion Service is provide support, friendly, approachable support to families and schools in pretty much all things SEN, which is obviously broad, but that can be anything. If I think about families in particular, that could be anything around understanding what SEN means, systems, processes, schools, sort of the way schools work around SEN, as well as helping families identify specific needs. I support families with school visits when they're thinking about changing school, and do a lot of work around transitions, which we'll probably touch on today. How can I help families understand their options? How can we make sure that transitions between settings and actually within the school day are more successful? So it's kind of all things SEN for parents. EHCPs as well. Actually, I haven't mentioned them yet, and they come up a lot in SEND. But I work with parents with "Do I need one?" Helping with that, answer that question, and then in every sort of stage of the process, really in applications right through to looking at children with EHCPs and reviewing them and stuff. I always, whether the work comes from parents or schools, I always really try to foster a let's all work together approach. So wherever it's coming from, it's about working together. And I do a little bit of homemade support around SEND as well.
Wow, it sounds so important because I feel like that transitions, but also like knowing what's available and what support you can get. And I think sometimes it's really hard, isn't it? Because especially for a parent to know where do I go or how do I, and we often have that in our assessments. We often get the questions of like, what is available to my child? What do they need? How do I get there? And I think sometimes it's such a minefield. So to have someone dedicated to that is so important, because I can imagine you've helped so many parents with and sort of children access and education because of sort of those things that you've put in place.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is about a lot of, to be honest, my work isn't like, I'm not coming up with new crazy ideas. It's actually navigating it. And obviously the internet provides you with loads of information, but actually a lot of my work is supporting parents with clarity. And I often get the parents and carers I'm working with will like send me a message saying, I think my child might need alternative provision, but do they, or what does that mean, and what are the options in the area? And I can go back, and I always try to send bullet points if we're kind of, sometimes it's WhatsApp, sometimes it's email, but I'm like right, this is the key information, this is how we would make it happen, and these are the options. And just it is really about that clarity, because it can be a real minefield. So I think that's part of it. And I think from a parent carer point of view, like it's not just about processes. This is your little person. This is the most important person in your life. And then you've also got these processes that you have to go through that feel quite dehumanizing. So I think having that support to navigate it in a kind of friendly way, but also, the parents can kind of keep feeling those emotions with somebody just saying, right, there's a lot of kind of, I was going to say waffle, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of stuff around saying this is what's important, so that they can focus really on the children, because that's what it's
A
about.
lot of clinical talk, isn't there? So if
Oh
you look
yeah,
on the internet, it's a lot of that clinical language and
Yeah.
trying to work out what that means for your own child
yeah,
and how that fits in with you. So I think it's such a valuable service that you're
Yeah.
offering.
yeah,
I just was thinking then, I always think of the transition from primary to secondary, but even the transition from sort of like preschool, nursery into
yeah.
school.
It's
I'm
huge.
working with a family at the moment and they're doing that, and they're so on the ball, and nursery, no, preschool. I always get nursery and preschool. Preschool have been really supportive, but it's so daunting to think that your child is moving into a completely different environment,
Yeah,
somewhere that they've become familiar with, and then they're going to go into school, which is now a different style of learning, sit down, focus, that sort of thing. And it's a real minefield. Like, I'm talking with her at the moment and we're like, right, okay, what can we ask, what can we not ask,
mm,
what do we need to show, what don't we need to show?
Mhm.
And it's great when you've got the schools on board, but I think sometimes it's really hard if you haven't got that communication yet with the
yeah.
school, and that sometimes I think can cause a little bit of worry as
I
well.
think you're exactly right, and communication is the biggest thing that I try to establish with families and
Mm.
schools that I'm working with. Is let's get it in as early as possible, like that good lines of communication, because like I've worked in schools and I know that, you know, it's so busy, and it's hard. It is really hard.
Mm.
But actually, if we can be proactive with communication, it doesn't ever feel like, oh goodness, another email's come through, because actually you know that perhaps once a week you always have that email exchange, and that's just the way it is, and you know that that's going to be better for the child and the family. And I think also what you were just saying about like the parents not knowing what schools can do, that's a big bit of my work. And kind of bringing everybody together. And in the southwest, you know, in sort of Somerset, I've worked with a lot of the schools, and I know them quite well. And so I have an idea of what they can do. I also know kind of what would be expected. But actually just getting that relationship built before the child steps through the door is so impactful, and it's really simple. And parents bring their own perception of school. I get that a lot. You know, they think because that's their experience. School was like this for me. I'm really worried it's going to be like that for my child, because we know that's not going to work. And actually, a lot of things have moved on. They're not perfect, but there is a lot more on offer, and different ways of working. So a lot of my one recent secondary school visit I did with a parent of a year 5 student. She's just trying to look ahead. Actually, as we're walking around, I'm pointing out things that have changed, and you know, where they do their in-house alternative provision and cookery and woodworky type stuff that isn't GCSE, you know, like all these things you just don't know if you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. That is so true.
So shall we have a little talk about transitions
Yeah, I
then?
feel
Yeah,
So
we're
like
going that
yes.
way.
we've skirted around it a little bit, and transitions can mean anything from just going from one activity to another.
Mm.
Yeah,
But I think in the context of the service that you offer, it's about transitioning from preschool to reception within year groups. And possibly, I think one of the biggest transitions
yeah,
that individuals may face is going from primary into secondary.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and actually, you know, when I started the inclusion service, I didn't know what the kind of main streams of work I would do would be. I thought with parent carers there'd be quite a lot of EHCP related stuff. There is that, but actually transitions has been one of the key bits of work, and it's just having that person who understands SEND, understands primary and secondary schools, what you know, how they work and what they can do to bridge that gap. But yeah, and I think keeping it communication, as we said earlier, is the absolute foundation of good transitions, with any of those ones you just talked about, like joining a school or between year groups. Communication is key, and is actually sometimes scary for families because you think,
Yeah.
like, who do I talk to when I don't want to be that parent? But actually, you know, you won't be. Getting that communication is really key, so that everybody knows like what is the plan, and what are we going to do and when. And I think it's communication and preparation are the absolute basic fundamentals, and then a bit of flexibility and creativity. Like based on the child. I had one family, a year 6 student, and they had told me when we first spoke, like, she's amazing on the stage. And so I just said, okay, so what productions is the secondary school doing this year? Let's go and see one. Just go and see one as a family. And they loved it. And she was very scared about going to school, but that's just one thing. It's not putting on anything different or new. It's just something that's a hook for her, a positive hook. Or I'm into Lego, they've got a Lego club, just go to the Lego club at lunchtime or after school. We don't have to do the whole like tour thing straight away. And those things are perfectly reasonable to ask. And I think for parents, knowing that there's things that are outside of the classroom that their young people might kind of be interested in, and kind of then talk about.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, because I often have a conversation with parents around sort of like the best way is to have that like open conversation with teachers, and if you're going to have a chat in the classroom, just follow it up with an email, just so you've got it and you've both understood what you want and the child wants, things like that. But because I do get that question a lot, that like parents don't want to be that parent that they keep asking or they keep saying. And what sort of advice would you give to a parent that they're worried about that? Because I think, like you said, there's either stigma or worry that they don't want to be too much, but then they want the best for their child. It's sort of like, how would they start opening up that conversation? Because I've also said about sometimes you don't want to go in and be like, oh, these are all the difficulties and these are all the things that I need help with. But I kind of say, like, maybe start with the observations that the parent has seen and that has school seen, and trying to do it like that. But what would you recommend is like the best way to start that conversation?
I guess two things. I guess around the transitions bit, I would my three kind of principles, we've already got to communication, preparation, and the third one is that kind of like record keeping. I'm a little bit of a stickler for records because they're very helpful, but actually for everybody, so everybody just to have the plan written down from every conversation. And I think for parents it's helpful, but it is actually also helpful for schools. And if you're having online chats now, you can get, if you're having Teams or online chats, there are functions you can just press record minutes. And I would suggest using that if you're doing it that way. Obviously, if you're doing it in person, I would just jot down the actions, or say at the start, actually, I think we're going to have some really helpful, you just phrase it nicely. You don't have to say, I'm minuting this. You can just say, just so I know what we're coming away with and what we've agreed, I'm just going to jot stuff down and then get that sent out, because that record keeping is really, really helpful. In the like, I've got a concern, I'm worried my child has a SEN, I don't know how to talk to school about it. That was my very first inquiry when I set up the inclusion service, was exactly that. And I had a lovely chat with this parent. And so what I would suggest is, if you can kind of pin down what your concern is, that's actually super helpful. In Somerset, there is it's acronyms and long words, but in Somerset there's the graduated response tool on the website, local offer website. One of the things in there, one of the additional documents is called a quick checker. If you googled Somerset graduated response quick checker, you find it. And when I did used to work for Somerset Council supporting SEND, it was one of the things I helped develop. But basically it's a really short like little questionnaire, and it goes through each, I'm going to get a bit techie now, but broad area of need. So your four areas of SEN, there's like maybe 5 to 10 little questions for each. Does the child, young person, find concentrating difficult? Yes or no. Are they sensitive to loud noises? Yes or no. It's a very basic, like, initial, let me organise my concerns. What is it I'm actually worried about? And doing something like that, just to pin it down for I guess for parents, it's like a little bit of a crutch to like communicate what their concern is clearly. And for schools, to understand what it is clearly, if that makes sense. Like, okay, this is where it's, this is what parents are talking about. Because it's that also emotive thing again, isn't it? Like emotion, they're your children and you're worried about them, and sometimes you're not quite sure exactly, but you feel like they're not getting on right at school, or it's not going well, but you don't really quite know how. So I would say something like that Somerset Graduate Response Tool Quick Checker is a really helpful little thing. We can we can pop the link to that little quick checker in the show notes for you guys to have a look at. Yeah, it is super quick and easy, and I think it's a good little tool to just shape a bit of a conversation with schools. And whether you're kind of thinking about primary or secondary schools and kind of sharing a concern, you should really be going to the class teacher or the tutor as the first point of call, not necessarily direct to the Senko, because actually there's that responsibility of that person to be the kind of the first point of call for things. So that's who I would say to go to, and obviously they would then be kind of having that conversation with you, but also maybe looping in the Senko if they feel they need to. So I thought that was quite just important to share. If you want a slightly heavier read or task in preparing for a chat with a school, they shouldn't be heavy. Maybe I'm doing them a disservice, but I'm thinking about the school's SEN information reports, which are on their websites because they have to be, and they have to be updated every year. And basically what they are, it's not the SEN policy, they are slightly different, but the information report should be a parent-friendly summary of how the school identifies SEN and all of the things they can put in place. So yeah, that would be a good thing to have.
Having worked at
a
a
look.
school, I feel that should be something that I knew was on the website.
Again, we're on a podcast, but me and Abby just literally looked at each other and went,
Oh, what's this?
that would be so useful.
They should, yeah. And there are some schools, there's some really good ones. Like there's a primary school in Somerset that was doing them as videos. So I think there's a Word
Nice.
document, but there's also videos, like, so you can see what they do. As we were talking about earlier, there's so much like jargon and complicated language, but they are supposed to be, according to code of practice, accessible for parent carers, and should be kind of co-created with a little group of parent carers at least. So the SEN information report, it will be on the websites because they are. But yeah, that could be a good one. And that parent I was talking about earlier, the very first client, the very happy dance when she contacted me. We talked about the quick checkers, and then we looked at the school information report together. And then she could just ask in a friendly way, just like, oh, I know that you have a school information report mentions ELSA's emotional literacy support. Is that something that you feel that would be useful for my young person? So it gives you a bit of an idea of what you could kind of suggest.
Yeah, and I think that opens up so many doors, doesn't it? Because also if you're reading into sort of the narrative the school has around SEND and the things that they're offering, that also helps guide your conversation as well, because you're not then going to go into the conversation, start listing all the things that your child needs, and then the school's going to go, whoa, we don't have that. But if you've read that document and they do, it might even be a little bit more, like it just has that conversation. And I feel like also this is a really good point, because I think we got carried away and just went straight into transitions, didn't we? But I thought it might be worth sort of giving everyone a bit of a background around before you started the inclusion service, and what made you decide to start your sort of, founder the inclusion service and things like that.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? I knew this would happen today. When we first chatted a few weeks ago, I was thinking this is going to be good, and we'll just chitter chatter. But yeah, so before the inclusion service, the job directly before, I was an advisory teacher for Somerset Local Authority. So that job was about supporting schools. We didn't really do direct parent work. We met parents if the schools kind of asked us to get involved with them, but it was providing training for schools. It was if there was a particular child a school wasn't sure how to meet their needs and they wanted a kind of another opinion, I would go in and support them with that. And I've also been a Senko for an upper school, a state upper school in Somerset, and was an assistant head there, so I could do some really good work around sort of whole school development of inclusion and send. I also did some stuff for their trust when I worked there. They sort of set up a trust within the school, and so I sort of started to learn a little bit more about the younger years. Oh, actually, and at the council, the local authority, I was all year groups as well. And I do exam access arrangement assessment as well, which I did a little bit for the council as one of the things that schools could buy from the council, but obviously I do that a bit now. And I've been thinking for ages about, could I do this independently, and the parent bit, like that was the bit I was like, I was always having conversations with people about their children, about the young people, about school, about SEN. And it was actually in the hairdresser once, we were talking about it, and I think that was the moment it clicked. I thought, no, I really think I could do this. And yeah, so I thought, yeah, let's give it a go. And it's been, yeah, really busy from both a sort of a school point of view and parents, which I've really, really enjoyed, because as I said, it's not been something I've done so much of. And the home ed is entirely new to me, and I've worked closely with one family so far a lot, and well, they've said it's been really, really helpful in understanding their young person and how they learn, how their brain works, and giving them a bit of the freedom to say, actually, you don't have to kind of replicate school. And this young person, one of the things they really want to develop is kind of confidence in social situations. So working on that's great learning. We don't have to be doing maths and English every day necessarily. So lots of bits and pieces, and a bit of a varied history. Oh, I didn't say, actually, very, very first I was a secondary English teacher, and the it's on my website, but the seed though for SEM was sowed when I was at university studying English literature, because I managed to wangle myself onto the medical trip to Belarus to go and volunteer in an orphanage for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it was all the medics and then the English lit student, and that was definitely the start of it. Yeah, right back then, when I didn't even necessarily know it was going to be teaching. But yeah, that was the seed, and I often think of that trip.
Oh, very just wealth of knowledge that you're gonna and I again go, this is amazing.
Yeah. Only if we had our cameras on, we're both like I feel we keep taking stills from these recordings, because me and Abby are just like, we're just on the other side, like, we've got so much respect for so many people right now.
Do you know what? That's what you find when you're like working in the world of Sen, though. Like it's really tough, and it's a really hard place to be, particularly for families. But there are a lot of good people helping each other, and a lot of good people trying to do their very best. And I think that of a lot of schools too, and I know sometimes relationships can be tricky when we're talking about Send and schools sometimes for families. But a lot of schools are trying and doing their best, and it's a tricky place to be, particularly at the moment. And that is, I know that's what the media and everything is saying, but really, from working in schools, honestly, it is. And I think having some awareness of that is kind of helpful. But we do, on the flip side, these are actual little young people, and they deserve to enjoy their education, and they deserve to have the education they need.
Yeah, and I think when we first caught up before this podcast, we were talking, weren't we, about all the changes when it was coming to EHCPs and things like that, and sort of I think there's so many different, is it legislations, or there's so many different things like that to navigate, and I think it does make Send a minefield, and I think sometimes that's why we try and come back to like all the things that we can do to help, because I think we were talking, weren't we, that sometimes we just have to pause and wait and try and find out what actually they're trying to do with these legislation and things like that before we start reacting, because we don't know, actually, do they start off sounding really negative, but in the long run it ends up being positive, or is it starting really positive and actually in the long run it makes things more difficult? So you were saying about that, weren't you, that actually we're just going to pause a second and see
how things land, and what actually, I think there's, sadly, I think a lot online, there's also a lot of kind of hyping up of issues around Send, and then you'd actually read the detail of, right, okay, what is being said, and actually definitive this is what's happening isn't actually being said at this point, and we're kind of whipping up worry. And I know that it's delicate, isn't it? Because yes, if we interpret things in certain ways, it could be really scary, and it
Yeah.
might be if that happens. But we have to give our opinion of, like this kind of idea of scrapping EHCPs for a lot of kids. Like,
Yeah.
if that goes in their current form, that would be awful.
Yeah.
But actually, if genuinely we're talking about making schools better equipped for more children with SEND, and we're actually funding it properly, and it's actually going to happen properly, which would take a huge amount of work and time,
Yes.
that would be a good thing. But I totally get why, especially families, are thinking, well, you can't get rid of an EHCP, because that is the statutory thing, that is the legal thing that means my child gets what they need. And they've, sadly, you hear such a language of fighting around EHCPs, and you're like, I get why we're all using it, because it's so hard, but wow, it's mad that that's the case. Like, we have to be feeling like it's a fight, and it does feel like that often.
We often have those conversations, don't we, with parents, that they're just saying, I'm fighting for this. I need more for them to just get those things in place that just make it easier for their children.
And it's so hard, and especially, and I think I definitely resonated when you were saying about working with the parents, because I think, yes, it's really important to work with professionals, and that's an aspect of the job that I love, getting to meet new professionals and find out what people are doing. But I think the opportunity to work with parents and provide them the understanding, and there's a bit like doing this podcast, isn't it? It's an opportunity to give people an insight into new areas. And even me and Abby, like, we've been doing it, I've been doing it for years, you've been doing it, but we meet new people and we learn new things,
all
and
the time.
it's so lovely to be able to hear another person that's sort of like, I just want to be there for the parent. I just want to support them in their understanding. I want to help them with the communication with school, because I've got the knowledge around school, because you've been in there and you've done that. So actually, you come with that knowledge, but you can now advocate for the parent and the child, and really hopefully give them that clear pathway to get that support for their children. And yes, it might be challenging because of funding and things like that, but in the long run, if a teacher can just turn around and go, oh, I kind of understand a little bit more now, that in itself
Is
will
huge,
change will change the classroom for the child. Simply.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And actually, it is often not it's not a new whizzy magic wand. It's just a little bit more about understanding. And I always say to parents, like, where it's been, where they're saying, oh, can you help with this school thing or this transition thing? Absolutely. But I'm never going to go in and slam a code of practice on the table and be really like, right, do this, do that, because it's about establishing a good relationship. As I said, it's really hard in schools right now, but if we can get that communication good and that understanding, it's going to make it better for everybody, and especially the child or young person. So yeah, it is about kind of working together. And I know, like, because I have worked with a lot of the Somerset schools, I haven't had any school where a parent have said, can you help me out with this? Where a school said, no, Zoe's not allowed in, or we're not allowed to, we want to just deal with you. It's always been, yeah, no, great, let's get another point of view. Let's work together. So I think that is helpful. I
think everyone wants, I mean, I know that they do. Everyone wants the best for the individual. It's trying to link up and find different ways of doing it, because I mean, there's times like with my own little one, I go, I do not know how to deal with what's happening right now. And it just takes that different viewpoint or a slightly fresher idea, and you all learn from each other, don't you?
And that's what I find with our assessments. A lot of the time schools, because we've done that bit of work where we've gone, oh, this is their processing speed, this is where that's coming from, this is maybe the sensory challenges they're having, have you considered that? Like, it's never anyone turning around to school and going, you have to. It's, could you consider this, or would you mind that? And a lot of the times they're like, we can give it a go because we know why we're doing it. And I think that's a lot of it. If they know why, they can then, that fuels them more.
Absolutely. And I think with you guys, like, that identification and how thorough your assessments are and how much they hold the family is one of the things I think that's quite unique about BIBIC, because it is, like, such a thorough assessment process that obviously schools can't provide in the same way. I think it does feel like it's we've really kind of we've got the identification here and these sort of suggestions, and then and it's then, I guess, a lot of the conversations I end up having and the work I'm doing is a bit of follow-up of that type of thing with schools and making it happen. And sometimes it's like the identification stuff has happened, and I had a family where the year 6 like taster days they do in the summer at secondary had kind of gone really badly, and so they contacted and said, can you just help another conversation with the secondary school, or a conversation, we hadn't had one at that point. She said, please, can you just help? And we had that, and the week before the summer holidays, we had a written down plan, and that happened, and they've got into summer holidays, all, especially the child, feeling a little bit calmer about September. And that's the kind of like the next phase of the sort of identification, suggestions, like those little review points, and okay, let's tweak and adjust as we can, really.
So from your experience, what are the most common challenges that students with additional needs face, like when they're transitioning, particularly to secondary school?
Environment. The change in environment, I think, is big. Obviously, you're going from your one teacher, your one classroom, whether it's a big primary or a small primary, the secondary is going to be a bigger environment. So the environment is one of the biggest things to prepare for. And I think you've got to understand what the impact of the environment will be on the child, or you can kind of make educated assumptions around that, so you can plan a really good transition for the environment. So some of the things that I know a lot of secondaries will offer and can do, again, without any kind of, not necessarily rolling out red carpets and making everything jazzy and different, is those kind of out of school hours visits when all the other children have gone, just to get used to the space. I often advise that, and parents to do like a drive-by of the school at different times of the day, when they're ready, looking at the going in, going out time. We also say you can have a sneaky look at how strict the uniform policy is when you see the children going in and out. That child's got purple hair and that shirt's not tucked in. Or you spot there's some children in leggings and you think, okay, there's some allowances probably happening for that type of stuff. So yeah, environment, I think, is one of the biggest challenges, and the worry that all children have, like getting lost, but the size of it and the amount of people. So I think understanding things like how lunch can look a bit different. I don't know a secondary school that doesn't have some kind of provision or ideas around not having to go into the massive canteen all together all at the same time. So I think environmental factors. I think the other concern, the second, I guess, most frequent concern is how will all those different teachers really know my child? And the same from the child's point of view, like, will they understand me? And that's where, at that transition point, having like a really clear, simple pupil profile is so important. Not just about the needs, but actually, what do they like? Can you have a little chat about their football club on the way in? Or just a little bit like, oh, played well last night, didn't you? As they walk in the classroom, like, that's so impactful. But having that, like,
as an individual.
Yeah. And the strengths and interests bit, the connection, getting the connection. So having some kind of really simple one-page pupil profile, interests, strengths, challenges, as well as simple, the key classroom strategies, and the parents and the child knowing this is what all my teachers have been told, is so important. And when I was a Senko, I had a couple of students that had dyslexia, and they were really aware of their personal profile, and they would actually have a copy with them and be like, oh, don't forget I have to sit at this position, or quite confident with it. And you don't always get that, but I loved that they had kind of taken ownership and saying, oh, actually it's best for me if I use a computer for this bit of work.
Love that they can advocate for themselves.
Just about to say that.
That's the goal, isn't it, for us? And if you can get to a point, if the child is able to be able to say, this is me, this is what I need. So environment is the most common worry, and will they know me in that primary to secondary, and how will they know me? And just knowing things like, actually, on those inset days in September, the Senko does a briefing to all staff and flashes up the pictures and the reminders of the key information, because you might have new staff for the children. And again, like, I can quite confidently say that happens it must happen at every secondary. There's not one I can think of where Senko doesn't get a slot for that.
Pretty good. That's especially with the pictures, because it's like, again, if you think teachers all learn differently and things like
Yeah,
that, so see
exactly.
people's faces as well.
So it's quite comforting to know that
Yeah,
that's,
Yeah.
you know, there'll be don't, you know, remember this person, this is,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Not just an email with the profile. It's like,
yeah.
this is the face, this is them. You may have seen them on some of their visits or whatever as well. So yeah, definitely environment, definitely how will they know? I mean, obviously, once they start secondary, there is a worry about qualifications and will they be pushed through GCSEs when they're not able to access them, etc. But that doesn't tend to be the first worry at that transition point, but it's on the mind. So again, it's just understanding what they can provide, because a lot of secondaries do alternative qualifications as well now. But you just don't know. Might be in there. It should possibly be in their information reports. Actually, you know, we do entry level, or they do. Some of them do sort of
But
we
again,
life
there's
and
so
living, and
much information on the
Mm.
websites, isn't it? It's
yeah,
managing to filter through
yeah,
To get to it.
and
Yeah.
find it and
Yeah.
find which tab you want and what is it under policies? Is it under
Yeah.
information? Is it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of thing, like when I did the supported school visit for the year 5 family, as we're walking around, I'm just asking those questions like, oh, is it just GCSEs you do here? Or what else could they do if they're not able to access a GCSE? Like asking those questions, because, you know, people do learn differently, and actually having those conversationally and knowing what to ask is part of it. Yeah, definitely.
I think that leads on nicely, because how sort of does it differ between sort of primary and secondary in terms of identifying the sort of the needs and things like that?
Yeah.
Because obviously that's going to be quite a big thing.
Yeah, I think of primary, the initial identification quite neatly sits with the teacher because they see them all the time, and then and then it kind of gets passed up to the Senko if the teacher feels they haven't been able to kind of put things in place to support the needs that they've identified. So, for example, like if child's not quite getting their phonics, and the teacher thinks, okay, I'm going to do a little short sight word reading, see it, say it type thing with them and see if that makes an impact. Oh, it does, kind of job done. But if that doesn't work, they might then go to the Senko who'll do some more identification and get some other things in place. In a secondary, it's less neat, let's say, with identifying need, but there's kind of like key strands. So the info that comes up from the primary school is your first sort of strand of identification. If they've been on the SEN register, they'll automatically be on the SEN register and flagged when they join. It kind of, the systems talk to each other, if that makes sense, the register system. So the coding on the register, they will be identified as having a SEN, a special educational need of a specific type. So that's one way. However, if they've not been flagged that way, secondaries tend to have a kind of like a referral process of some sort. So I'm an English teacher, I'm worried this young person's not making progress, I've done the things I can in the classroom, I want to refer to the Senko. So they tend to have like a referral form or process that literally says, you know, what is your concern? What have you tried in the classroom? And then the Senko can kind of pick that up and go, right, I could do some more assessments or some more specific checklists. So it kind of can come that way through the class teacher, through that referral process. Sometimes when I was working in the secondary school also, though, it would come out of pupil progress tracking meetings, which you'd have like the pastoral leads, the heads of year or heads of house or whatever, the head teacher, the deputies, and me, and we would look at loads of different bits of info of how the children were doing once a half term at least. So we would be looking at progress. I sound really cynical because it's not just about academic, but progress data, you know, how they're doing, are they making academic progress? Because that could be a flag for a SEN, but also attendance, also behaviour. I'm really interested in particularly secondary behaviour, like logs.
Yeah.
You know, if we're all saying this child's got loads of behaviour log points or whatever system you have, as a Senko, a Sentat, I'm like, okay, why? Where is this coming from? Have we thought about whether there's a SEN need? And if they're flagged that way, then the Senko would look into it a bit further. And so many of those kind of children that are flagged with behaviour needs, even at secondary, it's not been identified yet, there's an underlying language need. They're not understanding what they're hearing and they haven't got the vocabulary to express themselves. So the miscommunication happens, the frustration happens, it's presenting as behavior, but there's this underneath, this underlying learning need actually, and communication need underneath it. Yeah, so it can come through those kind of meetings, and then sometimes through those pastoral leads, if they're doing that kind of day-to-day positive, negative behavior, whatever system tracking, they might then refer. So different angles. And then of course parents, that the mostly, I will be honest, mostly parents flag at secondary when they're starting to worry about GCSEs and exams, and what, like, I really feel my child needs extra time, readers, breaks, whatever. Most of the flags come that way from parents, or start as that, and then you start looking into it and go, oh yeah, actually they're onto something here. This needs looking at. So it's kind of not as I say, not as kind of neat, although those kind of pupil tracking meetings happen at primary as well. There are different angles at secondary, or routes, let's say, to that identification. But it should be part of some schools still call them behaviour policies, but like behaviour policies, relationship policy, that if a child is presenting in a certain way, in a concerning way, we have to have a look whether there's an underlying SEN. We have to.
Yeah.
You've got to find out where it's stemming from, haven't you? Because
Yeah.
behaviour is a form of communication. We all know that. And if there is that underlying SEN and they don't have the words to be able to express what it is, the behaviour is going to be the way of them saying, there's something going on.
And the language need, like with the social communication stuff, you know, as the teenagers get more complex in the things they want to talk about, and I'm not talking about like, you know, necessarily like really high level intellectual things, but like the little nuances of social interaction, and, you know, they're using these, I don't know,
the ones that we can't understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like this means that means this, and you're a child that actually is like way behind language wise and nobody knows. You end up messing up those social interactions, and they turn into fallouts, physical outbursts, all that stuff. So it's quite incredible the amount of times that I've kind of got involved with children where it's been presented as a behaviour-y thing, and then I've gone, oh my goodness, they don't really know what's going on. Like they're not understanding the classroom language. They might be able to read, and we think they can read, but actually they don't have a clue what's going on. So they are at sea and they are lost. So no wonder we're seeing what we're seeing.
And the other day we were talking about secondary school, and he had started disengaging and was slowing down, and like just didn't want to be part of it. And it took us the whole of the assessment, but it wasn't until the end, and it was all to do with auditory processing, and I can't remember what I said, but he completely misunderstood what I said, and like it sounded exactly what I said, but it was completely different. And
That's
I
really
went,
interesting. Yeah.
and I went,
that's it.
do you ever like manage to like, do you really struggle in conversations or in the classroom? He's like, well, half the time I have no idea what they're talking about, and I don't even know half the time what they're asking. We did the quick dichotics just to look at auditory processing, and he was really, really struggling. And that was why, and it was just something so, I say so small, but it was just one snippet, one little area, which was now having such a big snowball effect on in class, because in primary he was doing, like, he was excelling, he was really excited about learning. Straight into year 7 he was really excelling, really excited, but it was just that slight transition into like year 8, year 9, where they ramp it up a little bit.
Yeah, the language gets more complex in the classroom, it's quicker paced, all of that stuff. Yeah,
and he was just struggling to process the auditory information around him. And actually, for a teacher to know that, they could then turn around and go, okay, we're giving written instruction, we're checking that he understands, that sort of thing. It's so, especially when you've got a class of, what are they, 30, 35, 40 nearly, it's so hard to
in some areas,
yeah, it's so hard to pinpoint.
And I wonder whether a lot of that is probably because the ramp up of complexity of the classroom, but also perhaps there was more of a shift away from the using the visuals, using the, you know, concrete aids, the let's look at this in a picture, whatever. And there's a lot of work going on in secondaries at the moment about actually, let's not just get rid of, they don't get rid of it, but like, let's not forget that that's actually helpful for all children to make things stick. You know, having things presented in more than one way is helpful for everybody. But it's those little moments, isn't it, when you're like, I think this is auditory processing, you're like, oh yes, this, you know, if everybody knows this could really change things for this young person.
And I was thinking, because you said about in primary school, sort of that communication, and you talk to the teacher, and then they then refer to the Senko. Is that the same in secondary school? Do you go to the tutor, form tutor, and then they were the one, like, who is the first person you really to start that conversation
I
with?
would say tutor most of the
Yeah,
time. And some they like have different. Sometimes they have different ways of doing it, but the tutor is in theory the kind of first port of call for everything. And then sometimes they kind of then the tutors are then managed by a head of house or a head of year or whatever. So they would perhaps raise it that way, and then it would come to the Senko from the head of year or head of house, or some it kind of goes from tutor to Senko. But the tutor would be the first port of call, I would suggest, for a secondary age parent. Actually a lot often at secondary comes out of parents' evenings.
yeah.
And I'd be kind of just as a Senko, I would just be like floating around at parents' evening, or have a few parents I'd said, oh, actually, should we catch up at parents' evening? Otherwise, I'd be there. And then teachers sometimes would just say, do you want to just go have a quick chat with Zoe? Like that's sometimes the model, but not always. Yeah.
Sorry, me and Abby have. I think we're gonna have to sit in a black box when we do these. We've just had someone in a Land Rover drive past the window with a pigeon sat on his car.
Sat on, like,
car.
on the back truck bit, just having a nice little ride.
That's absolutely amazing. Just sat there having it like a nice time. That's amazing.
We're both like trying.
What is going on? You did an amazing job. That is, oh my gosh.
We both looked at each other and looked at
Like, are you seeing this? That is so funny.
What is going on? And it was on such a good roll. I was thinking, please,
Go
just
away.
go away.
Do you know what? In the school I used to work in, we used to have a lot of escapee goats, and I would be like we didn't have goats at the school, by the way. They were just like local goats, I don't know. And they would just appear. My classroom was like next, and when I was an English teacher and when I was a Senko, the office looked over the school field, and every now and again the kids would be like, Miss, I'm really sorry, there's just a goat at the window. I'm just like, you just can't cope. It's just too much. Like, well, do you know what? We're just going to have to stop for a minute because, yeah, let's all just go and look at the goat. And let's find a caretaker.
Oh, God. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all right. The question is, like, what is the pigeon getting out? Is it just having a nice time?
Just having a lovely time.
I wondered if he knew, if it was like his pet or he knew.
That is so funny.
I think we really do need like a room.
Yeah, just like a black box and just sit in the box.
Sorry. So what are some of the practical low-cost strategies that schools can implement to support students with SEND during transitions?
Okay, so I would suggest that the first thing is for transition specifically, the additional visits that are like specific to the child, like is it going to be a Lego club, is it after school? That's really low cost. Yes, you do need to have somebody available, but do you know what, it doesn't always have to be a teacher. I've had some families where they're like, their cousins at the school, they can show them around, and actually that was the best thing for the child in that time. Or it could be another student who is kind of acting like a mentor or whatever. So that definitely those additional visits. I would say that communicating out for schools, communicating out to parents. So you could do a bit of blanket communication and preemptive, like, this is the type of stuff we offer for a school from a school's point of view, so that parents actually kind of know that. Another really quick, really simple one, which I know some schools do, is they write postcards before the end of term and to some of the key children that are finding the idea of starting really tricky, and then they have the 6 weeks holiday, and then someone just pops it in a post box, like a couple in a post box throughout the summer, so the children get them, and there's that little reminder from the tutor or the teacher or the Senko or TA, whoever has written them, like, we're here, we're looking forward to you joining.
I love that.
So nice.
Yeah, we used to do it. We had these praise postcards, but I used to use them for that in the summer. And one of the secondaries I've been working with this summer, I was in there literally the last week of term, and that's what they were doing, which is great. And then for parents as well, like, a lot of schools have got pretty good social media accounts now. So I would say as a parent, I'd be having a look at their, not just the website, because that tends to be more formal, but like looking at their social media accounts and picking out some of the stuff that you think your young person or child would be interested in. Like, you know, the fact that on, I know some of them on sports day may have had, they had like ice cream trucks out or something, like show them that. Or, oh, look, they do a science club and they won this competition, look at this picture of it. Or they did this trip, look at that. Like using those little links. And I really think those kind of, again, for this is a parent one, is those little drive-bys of the school. You don't have to like go specifically like right now we're all driving to your secondary school, but as you're going to the supermarket or whatever, swing by that way and just, oh, that's the way we go in, isn't it? You know, like keeping it in the forefront of the mind a little bit, but in a kind of no pressure way, I think is really helpful. And if they're going to be independent in getting to school, like the cycling or the walking, then practicing that and just doing that together. But again, if you can do it in a way of, oh, let's walk or cycle to that shop and go via school, as opposed to kind of making it like this is exactly what school's going to be like because we're in holiday mode. Those little things I think are really helpful. And I will be doing wearing in of school shoes. We've started that in my house already because we don't want to have pinchy school shoes on the first day.
Not on the first day. That involves being really prepared. Normally, I'm last minute.
I was going to say,
last minute, Larry. No,
we were last year, and it was it wasn't well for my daughter. It was too much because also there wasn't the choice of school shoes she wanted, or the ones that were going to be it, and it wasn't about the school shoes, but it is channeled into the school shoes, so that's where it came out. So we have her feet will probably grow before September. We've got them too early probably, but you know what, all you can do is try these things and see what helps.
They might last half a term. You'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly. So some of those really simple things I think can make a difference, obviously depending on what's right for your child.
So sort of what message would you give to parents who are concerned about their child's transition to secondary school? Sort of what, because I feel like we've given lots of advice and lots of sort of insight, but what sort of like, just like a snippet, like what would you say to them right now?
I would say, if you're worried, think about where your worry is coming from. This is based on conversations with parents, but separate your school experience from your child. Really try and, organize, this is my worry, and actually what is my child worried about? Because I think being conscious of that is really helpful. And there is an element of, actually it's going to happen. They're going to be going there, and let's try and keep the feeling positive. Let's try and keep the feeling in the house positive about it, and know that you've got a bit of a plan for September if things go not the way you hoped.
And then where can our listeners go to find out more about yourself and the inclusion services?
Yeah, cool. So I have a website, which is just www.theinclusionservice.co.uk. So that's my website, which is the kind of, I guess, the more formally bit, but I'm on Facebook and Instagram as the Inclusion Service, and I do every week I have bits and pieces on there, but I try and kind of get some little snippets and tips for parents, so I would suggest a follow there would be a useful place to go, and a LinkedIn, which is more kind of professionals, but I'm on there too. My website does have a couple of kind of free download guides as well, which I'm going to keep trying to develop. So absolutely there. And I'll be popping up in the autumn and next academic year with Somerset Parent Carer Forum doing some of their Parent Wise workshops as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you were at a couple of events, so sort of not long back, weren't you? So you often can pop and see your face at those sort of things.
Yeah. And I would say, like, for parent carers, I'm more than happy just to, if you email me or through my website, or you direct message me on social media, just with a question or, a thought, I will just reply, and I'm happy to do I'm happy to do kind of short calls just to give a little bit of advice without having, without charging. That's part of what I want to be able to offer. So it's always worth just getting in touch, and I'll signpost and give suggestions and things as well.
Your videos on social media are great, and I do try and share them on our stories, because there was one you did and I thought it was just so much information, so they're really helpful as well.
Yeah, I'm going to keep trying to do those. So it's like doing this for the first time, isn't it? It's like, right, confidence thing. People will want to watch you hang your washing out talking about transitions. And ironically they did. So yeah, I will keep that. I'm going to do a couple of topics I've got in my brain at the minute. Is I do want to do one around what do exam access arrangements mean, and what are the rules around it, but like a really parent friendly version, because I know that's something that comes up a lot at secondary. And I'm going to do one about school entry, as in like preschool into school. Those are my next two topics.
Do another podcast. Oh no.
I'd love that.
Stroke processing. Oh no, we've got another podcast.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Zoe, and having a chat.
It's been fab. Thank you. I
really enjoyed hearing all about it, and hopefully our listeners will have got lots of valuable tips and information about it. I know Nat and I are going away.
I'm going to go tell off this therapy team. Have you been checking the school's website?
Yeah, SEM information reports. Go have a look.
Yeah. But thank you so much, though. We really appreciate it, and your insight has been so valuable. So I really hope that families will either reach out to you or sort of put questions in, and fingers crossed everyone for the transition into secondary school.
Good luck.
It will be okay.
Or even the transition into primary. Good luck. Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Sensational Life with Bibic. We hope you're leaving with new insights, fresh ideas, and a bit more inspiration than when you press play.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe. And if you have a moment, leave us a review. It really helps us reach more listeners and grow this amazing community.
If you've got a question, a story to share, or a topic you'd love us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at thesensationallife@bibic.org.uk.
And don't forget to come over and say hello on social media. Follow Bibic to stay up to date with episodes, extras, and maybe some behind the scenes bits.
Until next time, keep it sensational.